Imagine standing on a rooftop in Tel Aviv late at night. The air is still. Everything feels quiet in that uneasy way cities sometimes do before something breaks the silence. And then it happens. A siren cuts through the night. Not gradually, not with warning. Instantly, you turn your head, first south, then north. And what you see doesn't make sense at first. Activity in both directions. At the same time, that's not coincidence. That's not random escalation. That's coordination. A message. Delivered not in words, but in timing, direction, and design. Tonight, we're going to break that message down. Because what just happened is being misunderstood. Most coverage will frame this as just another step in a long chain of events. But it isn't. This is different, structurally different, strategically different. And if you don't understand why, you won't understand what comes next. But before we get into systems, strategy, and decision-making, pause for a second, because behind all of this, there are people, families sitting in shelters, phones losing signal, parents trying to stay calm while listening to sounds they can't control. In another city, people watching familiar places change in ways they never imagined. Ports, roads, skylines, all becoming something else under pressure. These aren't abstract ideas. They are the human layer beneath every strategic calculation. And for the first time in this phase of the conflict, multiple major population centers experience that pressure at the same time. Not sequentially, not separately, simultaneously. That alone matters. Because when events unfold in parallel instead of sequence, they create a completely different kind of strain. On systems, on responses, on decision-making. Now here's the key question. When two major locations are targeted at once, is it symbolic or is it functional? Because those are two very different things. A symbolic action is designed to send a message emotionally. It shows reach, it shows power, but it doesn't necessarily change underlying systems. A functional action is different. It's designed to create interaction between effects, to produce outcomes that are larger than any single strike. What we're seeing here aligns much more closely with the second, because the locations involved are not random. They serve different roles. One represents internal function, the other represents external connection. When internal systems are disrupted, coordination becomes harder. When external pathways are disrupted, resupply becomes slower. When both happen at the same time, the entire system feels it, not in one place, but everywhere. And that's where the design becomes clear, because this isn't just about impact, it's about interaction. Let's break that down further. Certain types of infrastructure act as dependencies. They support everything else. Energy distribution, transportation routes, communication networks. If one of these is affected, systems adapt. If two are affected, systems strain. If multiple are affected simultaneously, the difficulty doesn't add up. It multiplies. Imagine trying to coordinate an emergency response without stable communication, with limited mobility, and under constrained energy supply. Each problem makes the others harder to solve, not linearly, exponentially. This is not accidental. It reflects planning that focuses on system behavior, not just physical damage. Now shift to the second location. The approach there appears different, and that difference is important, because different tools are suited for different objectives. Some systems are designed for high-impact, concentrated force. Others are designed for flexibility, movement, precision within complexity. When an operation requires interacting with multiple components inside a larger system, flexibility becomes more valuable than raw force, because it allows for targeting the mechanisms that keep that system running. Disrupting operations doesn't always require destroying structures. Sometimes it means interfering with the processes that make those structures useful. And when those processes are interrupted, recovery becomes slower, more complicated, more uncertain. Now connect this to the broader timeline, because what happened tonight didn't start tonight. It's part of a sequence, a pattern. Earlier phases created pressure, forced responses, consumed resources, adjusted expectations. Each phase changed the conditions for the next one. So when something happens now, it's happening in an environment that is already different from where things began. This matters because systems under sustained pressure behave differently. They become less flexible, more constrained, more sensitive to disruption. And when multiple pressures are applied at once, those constraints become more visible. There's also a human dimension to this, one that is harder to measure, but just as important. When populations experience repeated alerts over time, behavior changes. Not because people stop caring, but because constant high alert is impossible to maintain indefinitely. Routines adjust, responses shift, and that creates moments of increased vulnerability. Not intentionally, just naturally. Timing interacts with that. Night carries a different weight than day. Visibility changes, perception changes, emotional impact changes. When multiple locations are affected during that window, The effect is amplified. Now zoom out again, because none of this exists in isolation. Events like this move beyond borders almost immediately, through markets, through supply chains, through perception. Energy reacts. Transportation reacts. Risk calculations adjust in real time. Even systems far removed geographically begin to feel the effects indirectly, through cost, through uncertainty, through shifting expectations. And that creates pressure elsewhere, on governments, on institutions, on decision makers. At the same time, responses are being prepared, evaluated, debated, because every response carries consequences, not just immediate ones, but second-order effects and third-order effects. Act strongly, and escalation becomes a possibility. Act cautiously, and deterrence may weaken. This is the core dilemma. There is no cost-free option. Meanwhile, external actors are watching closely, not passively, actively. Every move is being interpreted, every signal is being analyzed, because what happens here influences calculations elsewhere, and that creates a wider layer of complexity, where regional events connect to global dynamics. The most concerning outcome isn't necessarily rapid escalation, it's sustained pressure, repeated interactions, gradual accumulation of strain, because systems can absorb shocks, but only up to a point. Right now, we are still within that threshold, but closer to it than before, which brings us to the critical question, what happens next? Because the next set of decisions will determine direction, toward containment or toward expansion. There is still a path that avoids the most severe outcomes, but it requires precision, restraint, and timing, and those decisions are not made publicly. They happen behind closed doors by a small number of people under enormous pressure, with incomplete information, and the outcome of those decisions will shape everything that follows. Because this moment is not just about what already happened, it's about what it sets in motion. The next hours, the next days, will matter more than most people realize. And by the time the full picture becomes visible, the direction may already be set. That's why understanding this moment matters, not just as an isolated event, but as part of a larger shift. A shift that is still unfolding, and one that the world is now watching very closely.